One knob turn, one EQ tweak, massive difference. Hey guys, and welcome back to another Random Distractions review video. So a little while back I was contacted by Arylic. They make music amplifiers and streamers, and they wanted to know if I'd be interested in checking out their LA50 wireless streaming amplifier. Now, just to be upfront about it, this was a sample unit, but no money changed hands, and like always, nothing I say in this video was run by them before it went up. So this is just my honest take on it. Now, there's a lot to get through here: unboxing, setup, some quirks I ran into, but the short version is this. What surprised me wasn't the feature list, it was how much the sound changed with a few adjustments. I'll show you exactly what I measured and let you hear it for yourself by the end. Alright, this is the unboxing of the Arylic LA50 wireless streaming amplifier. Here's the front of the box. On this side, it talks about easy control with the Go Control app available on Google Play and the Apple Store. On this side, it talks about all the different things the LA50 does. It's got a 2.4 and 5 GHz Wi-Fi, a TPA3116D2 amp chip, good for about 50 watts per channel into 4-ohm speakers, or 30 watts per channel into 8-ohm speakers, and an ESS 9023P DAC, HD audio, CEC support, HDMI TV input, PC DAC. It also supports USB and a LAN connection. It's got a sub out, and it's compatible with Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, and works with Apple AirPlay and Google Cast. So yeah, it offers quite a few different things. Let's open it up. Inside, there's a nice little bag with the Arylic logo on it holding the amplifier itself. In hand, it feels fairly light. There it is. The Arylic logo sits on top with a volume mode dial on the left and the IR sensor next to the LA50 branding. On the back, there's a reset button, a USB-C port for PC DAC, a standard USB port for USB drives, a LAN connection to hardwire it, an HDMI input, line in, subwoofer out, optical in, the speaker terminals, and the DC power input. On the bottom, just some basic info: manufactured in China. That power rating 24 volt DC at 4.16 amps is actually the input spec for the power adapter. Do the math on that though, and it works out to right around 100 watts, which lines up pretty closely with the amp's combined output across both channels. You also have some rubber feet on the bottom, and some ventilation. There's a nice little foam piece protecting it, and the user's manual, which honestly looks pretty nice. Good quality, lots of pictures showing the different connections and remote functions. Underneath that, the power brick and remote, both nicely labeled and sectioned off. Here's the power adapter, a pretty standard AC-DC brick. And here's the remote. It's actually a nice looking remote, mostly plastic, but it doesn't feel like cheap plastic. And the D-pad and center button feel like aluminum. It also takes two AAA batteries. On the remote, it's got a power button, mute, a D-pad style button, treble up and down, bass up and down, an EQ button which cycles through flat, classic, pop, jazz, rock, and vocal presets, a Bluetooth button, and 5 preset buttons. The D-pad handles previous and next track, volume up and down, and the sender button is play, pause, or mute if you're on line in. There's also a status LED up top. A few of these buttons also do something different if you hold them down for a couple of seconds. Holding power resets the unit back to factory settings. Holding volume up or down will continuously adjust rather than one click at a time. Holding the EQ button jumps straight to flat. Holding the Bluetooth button puts it into pairing mode for a new Bluetooth connection. Holding input switch puts it into pairing mode for a new network. And holding treble or bass resets those back to their defaults. Alright, here's the back, and I'll go ahead and plug this in. And there we go, we've got power, and the LED strip along the bottom lights up. One thing worth mentioning, it takes a little over 20 seconds to actually power on and be ready to use, so don't be alarmed if it doesn't respond right away. Those rubber feet hold it down pretty firmly too, although that may depend on the surface you set it on. That LED strip actually tells you what mode you're in too. White means Wi-Fi, blue is Bluetooth, green is line in or Spotify Connect, purple is TV ARC, Yellow is optical, red is USB playback, and magenta is USB DAC. It'll also breathe when there's no signal, stay solid when connected, and dim down if it sits idle for a while. With the unit unboxed, I moved it over to my desk setup and hooked everything up. This setup is actually in my bedroom. It's paired with my Arendal 1961 bookshelf speakers, so this is a completely different room than my living room home theater stuff you're used to seeing. Different acoustics, different use case too. This is going to be a near-field desktop listening setup. So getting the amp connected was mostly straightforward, but I did run into a handful of quirks along the way that I think are worth mentioning. I actually reported all three of the first ones to Arylic together, so I'll go through those first before getting into how that conversation went. The first one was that sometimes after switching inputs, say going from Wi-Fi to Bluetooth and then back to Wi-Fi, the volume control in the app would just stop responding. The fix at the time was a full power cycle, unplugging it, plugging it back in, and it would work again. Second thing, and this one's on me, I thought the manual said to hold down the volume knob to get the LA50 into Bluetooth pairing mode, and that didn't seem to work for me. And the third one, every once in a while the Go Control app would show the device as kind of faded out or grayed out even while I was actively playing some music, and I'd have to refresh the app to get back into the settings. So I sent all three of those to Arylic. On the Bluetooth pairing one, they kindly pointed out that the manual actually says to use the reset button on the back, not the knob. Turns out I just misread it. Once I tried it their way, everything worked exactly as described, and I was able to connect to both my laptop and my phone with no issues. They also asked for my current firmware version so their engineering team could look into the other two issues. After I sent that over, they came back with a beta firmware build for me to test. Kind of funny timing though, by the time I actually got around to reading their email and downloading the files, a public firmware update had already gone out on its own, which I had received on my system. And when I checked, it matched the beta build that they had sent me. So I didn't end up needing to test it separately. Looking at the official changelog for that update, neither the volume dropout nor the app fading issue is called out by name, so I can't say for certain either was a direct intentional fix. But I've since tested switching inputs several times with no volume issues, and I haven't seen the app fading problem come back either. The changelog does mention a fix for the device list failing to refresh properly, which could be related to that second one. Either way, I'll keep using it and see if those come back before I consider these fixed for good. One more thing I ran into after that, back during the unboxing, you saw the remote has 5 numbered preset buttons, but the manual never actually explains what they do. So I dug around and figured it out myself. Turns out you set them through the Go Control app. While something's playing, you can tap a heart icon to save it as a preset, and in the app it shows 10 preset slots. From there, you can assign one to a specific button on the remote, which the app also shows 10 available for the LA50. Except the remote only has 5 buttons, not 10, so right away there's a mismatch. And when I actually tested assigning things, the results were inconsistent. I saved 3 different playlists as app presets 1, 2, and 3, then assigned them to remote buttons 1, 2, and 10. Remote button 1, which had app preset number 1 assigned to it, worked exactly as expected. But app preset number 2, which I assigned to remote preset number 10, the button that doesn't actually exist, never showed up anywhere on the remote. And app preset number 3, which I assigned to remote button number 2, played correctly on button number 2, but it also played on button number 3, which I never assigned it to. So I'll be honest, I couldn't find a consistent pattern here, but for now, if you want reliable behavior, I'd stick to assigning presets 1 through 5 in order and not try to get clever with it. I'm not sure how many people would actually use this feature, but for me, it could come in handy, being able to instantly jump between my regular listening playlist and the test track playlist I use constantly for stuff like this. I'll go ahead and let Arylic know about this one too, but I didn't want to hold up getting this video out waiting on a response. So if anyone's curious how it turns out, let me know in the comments and I'll follow up. Overall though, pretty responsive support from Arylic on everything I'd already reported, and it's nice to see a company actually pushing out fixes rather than just letting things sit. We'll see how this last one goes. Sound-wise though, right out of the gate, I was pretty impressed. Pairing this with the Arendal 1961 bookshelf speakers on my desk sounded really great. Definitely gave me a reason to actually use these speakers for music instead of just headphones or AirPods. Also tried out the PC DAC input, which just needed a USB to USB-C cable. Only hiccup there was finding one that was actually the right length. I had one that was way too short and one that was excessively long. but I finally got a new one and got it working. Beyond the PC DAC, this thing is honestly loaded with ways to get audio into it. You've got AirPlay 2 and Google Cast for wireless streaming, Spotify Connect and Tidal Connect if you use those services, Bluetooth, optical, line in, USB for a flash drive, and TV ARC or eARC with CEC support if you want to hook it behind a television. For one small box, that's a lot of flexibility. While double checking things for this video, I also noticed Arylic's website lists Qobuz Connect support too, which wasn't mentioned anywhere on the box during the unboxing. So that's another streaming option available if you use that service. For most of my day-to-day listening outside of testing, I actually just stuck with Wi-Fi and Spotify Connect. It was super easy to get going, and once I had the sound dialed in, it was generally great to just sit down and listen to it. So at this point, setup was easy enough once I got past a few quirks, most of which Arylic ended up addressing, and I was generally enjoying listening to it day to day. But before calling it a win, I wanted to try out that 8-band EQ and see what the measurements actually said. First, let me show you how I set this up for REW. I've got the microphone positioned where my ears would normally be, the laptop's on the desk, and the speakers are to the left and right of my monitor, about 27 inches from the microphone. First, here's the baseline frequency response. It was completely flat, no EQ, and no bass boost applied. You can see the speaker's natural character here. It rolls off at the very bottom like you'd expect from a bookshelf speaker without a sub. And there's a bit of a bump and dip pattern through the mid bass. That's really just the nature of the driver and cabinet, not anything the LA50 is doing. Before I started dialing anything in, I actually ran a frequency sweep on each of the 8 EQ bands individually, just to get a feel for how much each one actually moved the response and where. That way, I wasn't just guessing blind when it came time to make adjustments. From there, I went through a good amount of trial and error, testing different combinations of the parametric EQ bands and the deep bass boost feature, trying to land on something closer to a nice, flat, accurate response, given what these speakers are capable of. Some combinations worked well, some didn't. One good example, at one point I'd had things sounding pretty boosted in the bass, but a few songs just sounded like the bass was kind of missing even though it was supposedly turned up. Turned out, when I went back and measured it, I'd actually cut one of the EQ bands too aggressively, trying to tame a peak, and it created a notch right around 200 Hz, right in that spot that mattered for a lot of songs. Backed that cut off a bit, remeasured, and that fixed it completely, matching what my ears were already telling me. After going back and forth on it for about 3 hours, here's the final settings I landed on. Much flatter overall, and importantly, distortion stayed low with the settings I landed on, which wasn't the case with all the combinations I tried along the way. And honestly, even with that natural roll-off down low, I came away pretty impressed with how capable these 1961 bookshelf speakers still are. They took every EQ change I threw at them really well, staying clean and controlled even when I was pushing certain bands fairly hard, which isn't always a given with a smaller bookshelf speaker. This is also where the LA50 kind of surprised me too. It does come with a handful of EQ presets built in, flat, classic, pop, jazz, rock, vocal, which is a nice option if you just want something quick and don't want to mess with settings. But having 8 fully adjustable EQ bands on top of that, each in 1 dB steps, meant I could actually measure my space and dial in something custom rather than relying on a generic preset. And that deep bass boost control was generally useful too, since I don't have a subwoofer in this test setup. It gave me a real usable bump in the low end that the speakers were actually able to produce. So to actually put this to the test, I recorded the same song twice, once flat and once with everything dialed in. Let's take a listen. First, we have the RTA recording of the Arylic LA50, no bass boost, no EQ, just the bass line to see what it sounds like. Okay, now I'm recording the Arylic LA50 with the final bass boost setting and the EQ turned on as well. So hopefully you could hear the difference there and see it too with the RTA overlay showing the frequency response in real time. It was the same song, same volume level, roughly matched between the two, same mic position the whole time, just the amp settings changed. Overall, I really came away liking the LA50 for what it is, an all-in-one streaming amplifier that can drive passive speakers directly. It's a pretty capable little unit. And the sound quality, once dialed in, was enjoyable. It had a few rough edges when I first started testing, but Arylic was quick to follow up and get most of them sorted out with a firmware update, which says something about how they support the product. What stood out to me most was just how much value is packed into this unit. You already heard me go through everything it can connect to and how deep the EQ goes, so I won't repeat myself, but add it all up and there's a lot packed into one small box. Honestly, this whole process also has me wanting to add a small subwoofer to this test setup. As you saw in the measurements, there's only so much low end you can coax out of a bookshelf speaker, like the 1961. And I'm curious how something like maybe an SVS Micro would round things out down there. So that might be something I look into down the road. If I had to say who this makes the most sense for, it's someone building out a desktop audio setup like myself, a bedroom system, or a secondary listening room and wants streaming, amplification, and real room tuning in one box rather than piecing together separate gear. Worth a look if that sounds like you. Well, that's all that I have for this video. I would definitely appreciate a like on this one, of course, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next one drops. But until then, I hope you have a good one.